Thanks for tuning into my channel. This video provides some thoughts on the lost son, a parable of Jesus Christ found in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 15. I think it's important that you read all of chapter 15 in order to get the context in which Jesus is speaking. And don't stop there. Jesus continues teaching in chapter 16. As he wraps up his teaching, in this instance, Jesus rebukes the Pharisees by saying, "You justify yourselves in the sight of others, but God knows your hearts. For what is of human esteem is an abomination in the sight of God." Many people today overlook the complete message in this part of the gospel, according to Luke. I think it's important to know that Jesus was speaking in a crowd. Tax collectors and sinners were drawing near to him. The Pharisees and the scribes began to complain, saying, "This man welcomes sinners and eats with them." Speaking and eating with tax collectors and sinners was not normal behavior for someone strictly following Judaism of the day. Therefore, as I present this essay, I encourage you to consider that maybe the primary message of Jesus in this parable was a caution to his disciples, the Pharisees, the scribes, and any others who consider themselves to be religious or religiously pure. I recognize the forgiveness of the Father and the redemption of the lost son, but read Luke chapter 15 closely. Jesus has already made it clear that the Father will seek each lost soul. Then continue into chapter 16, at least through verse 15. I propose Jesus' primary message may be a warning to his disciples and the Pharisees and scribes to be careful and avoid becoming like the second son, the son who does not physically leave the Father. This parable is a message to his disciples and followers to be clear about the purpose of Jesus' mission. A father had two sons. One day the younger of the two asked for his share of his inheritance that was due to him, then went far away and wasted his goods, living riotously. Reduced to poverty in time of famine, he hired himself out to one who sent him to his farm to feed swine. In that degrading occupation, his hunger was such that he wished to eat the bean pods given to the animals, but no one gave them to him. Remembering the abundance of his father's house, where the hired servants had plenty of food, he felt the sting of hunger more cruelly. Then feelings of repentance and humility pierced his soul, and he resolved to return to his father and to offer himself as a hired servant. He would say to him, "Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am not worthy to be called your son." He arose and went. If for a short time the son had forgotten the father never forgot the son. As the son drew near, the father recognized him, though his body was bent with exhaustion and his clothes were torn. The father ran to meet him and covered him with kisses. "Son, my son." The weary youth kept saying over and over again that he was no longer worthy of that name, son. The father, however, saw only his child, who had returned at last. After showering him with caresses, he gave orders to the servant to bring the best robe and put it on him, to put a ring on his hand and shoes on his feet. In a word, the father restored him to his dignity of son. It was true that the son had thrown away his rights, but his father was still a father. A banquet was prepared, and they ate merrily because, as he was saying in his joy, "This, my son, was dead and has come to life again. He was lost and is found." And they began to be merry. All this is in the order of nature. It is proper for the father to give without any thought of receiving anything in return. The father's generous conduct and forgetting all because of the joy of receiving his son back, stands out as light from shadow, in contrast with the behavior of the eldest brother. Returning from the fields and seeing the feast made for the wanderer, he became angry and would not enter the banquet hall. Then the father came out to reason with him. "Behold," the son burst forth, "these many years I have been serving you and have never transgressed one of your commands. And yet you've never given me a kid that I might make merry with my friends. But when this your son comes, who has devoured his means with harlots, you have killed for him the fattened calf." The brother would separate them. The father brought back unity in spite of all. The eldest brother said, "Your son, his goods." The father answered, "Your brother, all that is mine is yours. No wrong is done to the one who has remained at home. Nothing is taken from him, and this is justice. But the one who is lost and is found again is feted and restored to his dignity, and this is charity." The parable brings hope to anyone who has fallen into moral misery. It gives strength to return home in the certainty of being welcome. The lowest of delinquents, outlawed by human society, remains a son of God. Although he be in rags, he can, if he wishes, regain his native dignity in full. His return must be carried out in a spirit of humility, united to the firm resolve of starting anew. In the eyes of divine justice, this intention destroys all the evil done in the past. The honor bestowed on the penitent takes nothing away from what is due to the innocent. The patrimony of the Father is sufficient for both. The two brothers represent two common types of men in their relations to God. The spiritual squanderer throws away the treasure of faith and morality for adventure and satisfaction. But he is not obstinate in his fault. He acknowledges his error, longs for the Father's house, and is content to be received in the last place. This humility pleases God. The other is the dutiful type, who is never formally absent from home. However, he is attached to home by the advantages ensured to him. Earthly goods are already in his possession, and heavenly happiness stands as a complement to them. But he does not love his brother. He is not concerned with his mistake or his hunger. He believes that religion is served when all formalities are fulfilled. He is the believer whose spirit is stiff and dried up. He is like the man who, having performed a number of exterior acts of religion, thinks his duties are done, and only rights are left to him in regard to Father and Lord. Evidently, the Father prefers a repenting faith, overflowing from a soul that is alive, to the satisfied faith that has no soul. In the eyes of the Father, a penitent sinner is preferable to a heartless Puritan.